So welcome to the webinar today. Today we're going to be talking about providing secure platform to propel frontline workers, and with a focus here on HLS. My name is Mark Timmerman. I'm a security and compliance technical specialist at Microsoft, and excited for this webinar to be working with our great partners at KiZAN, with Tim and Nate, who will be taking us through the bulk of the presentation today. So today, a little bit of what we're going to go over, just to kind of give a preamble here, is we're going to talk about probably one of the hottest things in the device management space, of being Windows Autopilot. So the story goes within Microsoft a few years ago, there was a very senior person, we'll say, who got a new laptop. And when they went through provisioning their laptop, they had to go through a couple dozen screens just to be able to get their shiny new laptop provisioned and ready to go. So they went back to the engineering team and were like, is there a way that we can get this PC experience better for users and make it a little more streamlined? So Windows Autopilot, at least how the story goes, was sort of born out of that conversation. So that's our marketing way of saying how we can provision a device directly out of the box. So that certainly will be part of the discussion today, whether that would be someone getting a new laptop or really the focus of the frontline worker where, hey, I can give them a Windows machine without user affinity associated to it, and then they're just able to get into EMR or whatever they need to hit to be able to perform their job functions. We will also look at other ways that you can augment your architecture using W365. Special note there, there is some frontline worker capabilities that Nate will be going over to take note of. And then we will look at some of the MAM capabilities that exist within Intune. So welcome to the webinar. Very happy from a Microsoft perspective to be partnered with one of our top partners in KiZAN. So with that, I will cede the floor over to Tim. We also are monitoring chat. So if you do have questions, please place those in the chat. We will be compiling them and handling them at the end of the webinar. If we don't get to you, we will certainly make sure there is a follow-up, but we will hold questions until the end. With that, Tim, the floor is yours.
Mark, I appreciate it. All right, so moving on to, we want to lay the groundwork with some of the challenges that we can help solve around modernizing device deployment or shared and kiosk devices, as Mark said. So we really want to help establish that frontline story and those particular use cases. We also want to go through and help provide a solution for securing organizational data on personally owned devices, so the BYODs, without having to enroll them. We're also going to really touch on some of the pain points around simplifying hardware lifecycle management. Both with, as Mark talked about, Windows devices, but also mobile platforms. So we know there's going to be a myriad of Android and iOS devices, within your facilities that we want to show you how to simplify that onboarding process. And then really want to kind of prepare frontline users for anything, whether it's Copilot, whether it's, things around learning, around onboarding, offboarding, all those sorts of scenarios, or time management. So we're going to touch on really how this underlying platform is going to set the stage for everything. All right, so our agenda, again, really to kind of hit the points that Mark talked about earlier, we're going to really focus on that modernization story around endpoint devices using Intune Autopilot. Then, as he talked about, we're also going to hit Windows 365 Cloud PCs focused on the scenarios for frontline users and how that can augment some of what you may be doing today. Then we're going to hit on securing endpoints, both managed devices, so like we talked about those Androids and iOS stories and the iPads, as well as unmanaged devices, providing that mobile application management experience. Then we want to talk on a couple of things that we really want to set up the story around what can be done once we have a good device platform. And that's where user personas kind of fit into this device provisioning story, as well as how do we help the organizations prepare to leverage all the different frontline worker scenarios that are available within the Microsoft 365 portfolio. All right. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Nate, who's one of our principal consultants at KiZAN. and he's going to go through and share some of these topics with you, and then I'll pick you back up later on.
Good morning, good afternoon, folks. I'm Nate Barrier. I've been with KiZAN for about 10 years, and my primary focus is Intune and Config Manager. So our device management arm of things, do quite a bit of other things with the Azure security platforms, but Intune's one of my favorite tools, and especially, coming from the early days of Config Manager and then seeing how we can kind of transform to something that we consider a modern deployment, if you will. So first piece, we're going to be diving into how we can modernize our Windows PCs. So, start out with autopilot here. And, traditionally healthcare IT professionals spend quite a bit of time building and customizing their images. And I know that, they've got to unbox a device, put it on a desk, plug it in, get the deployment going. After the deployment's done, make sure it's going correctly. And then, a lot of times I see folks going in and making adjustments to the PC after the image is put down. So, it can really be time consuming, and we've been doing it that way for many years, but it doesn't have to be that way. So with Windows Autopilot, our users can receive a new inbox device directly from an OEM or a reseller, or it could be a used device from IT that we've repurposed as well. But the core concept here being that device comes, ready to go out of the box. It's never, came straight from Dell in some cases. So those users with Autopilot can simply just unbox that device, log in, and take off, if you will. So Autopilot's going to install all of our apps, policies, and our settings, and IT doesn't need to touch the device for that to happen. And if you're thinking that, our devices aren't all dedicated to individual users, Autopilot can support those scenarios where we might need it to self-deploy for shared use scenarios. And many of our healthcare customers are beginning to turn to Autopilot, and they're having a lot of success with streamlining their deployments and, really centered around eliminating repetitive and time-consuming device provisioning tasks. So just how can we make this experience better, not just for the user, but for our IT professionals? So with Autopilot self-deploying mode, we've got a solution that can handle kiosk and shared use and signage type devices. Those Ethernet connected devices will get to work without any interaction. So, if it's plugged into the wire, then it's going to take off on its own. And if it's a Wi-Fi connected device, then all we need to do is connect it to Wi-Fi and it'll get going from there. When that happens, those devices are automatically joined to your tenant and enrolled in Intune as part of that process. And just like the user-driven Autopilot, all of our configurations, apps, updates, certificates, what have you, are installed automatically. Autopilot makes use of an enrollment status page to provide progress for the devices as they provision, so we can see what step of the process they're on. And that also prevents the users from using the device until it's fully configured. Devices that aren't tied to a specific user can automatically be configured for those kiosk modes or shared device modes, or set up again as digital signage. So it's a perfect candidate for, any of our scenarios and most organizations. So our users, again, they're going to receive a lot of times a brand new workstation, and that can be sent down from hardware vendors like SHI or CDW, or, again, direct from Lenovo, Dell, those types of folks. And Autopilot works really anywhere. So anywhere you can conceive of getting work done, we can provision an Autopilot device. So they get connected to the internet, and, they could be at home, they can be in a cafe, they can be in a hotel room, and Autopilot can provision that device and get it going for those folks. Because the users only have to do a couple of super simple tasks, signing into the device and letting it, get it plugged in basically. That's going to be, a big increase in the user satisfaction there. With Windows Autopilot, again, it's going to install user-based policies and settings and device-based policies and settings, and all that's just pre-configured by IT prior to that deployment. So an example of that would be, we can protect these devices automatically by enabling BitLocker, and then that key can be automatically stored in Entra. Users can then self-service and grab that key themselves, or admins can retrieve it for them and get them back to work if, in the event of an accident there. So I'm going to talk about how autopilot works kind of in the back end a little bit here, so you guys can understand the process and why it's better than some of our traditional methods. For autopilot to function, devices need to be registered with your organization's tenant. So a unique hardware hash is going to provide positive identification for that device. So we know about the device before it, shows up on the internet. The hardware hash is the device identity, and we can target that device identity with apps and policies by way of Entra ID groups or Intune virtual groups. When a user receives their autopilot registered PC and connects it to the internet, the device is going to automatically customize the out-of-box experience to welcome the user, and it'll, welcome them to the organization and guide them through this process. During the setup, autopilot's going to identify all the apps, config, settings, etc., that are targeted to the device and targeted to the user. That enrollment process provides them, again, with that status. It's going to say we're installing the apps, we're registering your device, we've got 3 more apps to go or 3 more security policies to go. And then once that's completed, the user is presented with a laptop that's, ready to go for work. And it doesn't have to technically be a laptop either, but, that's going to be the most common scenario here. So with that, when the user leaves the organization, the device can be targeted with what's called an autopilot reset, which is going to quickly get that device back to an autopilot provisioning step where we can hand that device back out to another end user if we want to, or repurpose it with a different autopilot profile. The out-of-box experience again uses the logos and customizations provided from Entra, providing the user with some assurance that they're in the right place. So again, we can have your logo and say, welcome to the organization, and give them an idea that, hey, this isn't, anything nefarious, and I'm definitely on the right machine. So this video is going to explain some of the more nuanced capabilities of autopilot and how it can fit the needs of unique organizations.
IT pros have a lot to do, like preparing and deploying devices, and there's seldom enough time to focus on the bigger picture. Even with all that effort, employees are often unhappy with the device setup experience. It takes too long. They just want their new device to work right out of the box. And supporting remote users? That's not easy. More than just frustrating, all this lost IT and end-user productivity can be expensive. But Windows Autopilot can make IT more productive and get users back to work quickly by providing a low-touch, streamlined experience. It's flexible, so you can choose a deployment scenario that suits your business. For example, a user-driven autopilot deployment is, driven by employees, wherever they are. All you need is Microsoft Intune, Windows 10 Pro devices, and Azure AD to get started. Companies that haven't fully transitioned to the cloud can use a hybrid Azure AD Join autopilot deployment. They need a hybrid Azure AD environment, Microsoft Intune, the Intune connector installed, and the ability for autopilot devices to connect to a domain controller. And a white glove deployment provides a better experience for employees because it allows IT and your OEM or reseller partners to pre-provision autopilot devices before users get them. No waiting for devices to download apps, updates, or settings. Once configured, IT can ship devices directly from a partner or even repurpose existing devices. And they're ready to go as soon as employees get them. So they can continue to do great things for their businesses, wherever they are. They unbox their shiny new devices, log in, and take off. Users connect to the internet and answer a couple of quick questions. Then, Autopilot automatically installs apps, settings, and policies, if necessary, and the device is secure and ready to go in just minutes. Windows Autopilot enables IT to deliver ready-to-go devices directly to users, frees up IT hours, and improves employee satisfaction. Get started today with Windows Autopilot.
Some of the endpoint security benefits here with Intune and Autopilot can be pretty impactful as well. So our Autopilot provision devices can be configured to be secure out of the box. That means that once they're ready to go, the users don't need any additional security configurations. Intune device compliance allows us to evaluate security configurations on our devices. So we can take a look at things like firewall and antivirus status, and of course our BitLocker encryption status, even the passwords that the users make sure they have the right complexity there. And those compliance states can be viewed pretty easily from Intune as well. So we can quickly see, is the device compliant? Is it not compliant? And that lets our IT staff know if there's attention needed for those machines. Those compliance policies can also be used with device-based conditional access. So we can ensure that only our managed and compliant devices are going to access network or cloud resources. So we can say, you must be compliant if you want to access company data. Or maybe we need a little bit of extra verification there. So security baselines are some pre-configured Windows settings that can help IT rapidly get secure policies deployed to these devices. So there can be recommended security settings from Microsoft that are maintained by Microsoft. And, we don't have to go searching for how to harden these PCs. It's going to be pre-configured and ideally with the least amount of interruption for those users. And Microsoft Defender for Endpoint is an industry-leading cloud-powered endpoint security solution that helps secure against ransomware, fileless malware, and some other sophisticated attacks. Intune integrates with Defender for Endpoint, so we can use it for rapid configuration and deployment of that tool. And from the other side of this, Defender for Endpoint can share its threat levels with Intune so that we can determine device compliance based on those threat levels. So say that the Defender for Endpoint sensor is showing that there's malware or some issue with that device, then it can tell Intune, hey, not secure, and then that's going to be passed to conditional access and maybe temporarily block that device until we know that it's secure. Some other benefits here that are kind of built into Intune and as side effect here, autopilot. Our devices can automatically be wiped if they're stolen or lost. So as long as they're connected to the internet or when they come online, they're going to see that wipe request and start self-destructing, for lack of better terms there. Intune can also silently enforce our BitLocker protection. So it happens in the background as the device is provisioning, and then that key gets pushed up to Entra. But those keys in Entra are also viewable from the Intune portal so that our IT admins can grab them if they need to, and the users also have a method to self-service those if necessary. So overall, Intune provides us a pretty clear path towards some efficient device management and security, and it's going to ultimately leave our IT and security decision makers with a little bit more of a peace of mind and hopefully some time as well, because I know that if all of you are as busy as I am, I could definitely use a little extra time. So next, we're going to talk about how Windows 365 cloud PCs can increase our user productivity. So Windows 365 integration with Intune lets us automatically provision and re-provision cloud PCs, and that lets our users get working a little bit faster. And you might be asking, what is Windows 365? And more importantly, what is a cloud PC? So we'll go ahead and take a look at that. Got a video that's going to help demonstrate that a little bit, get you guys a good feel for what we're talking about.
This is a cloud PC. And so is this. And this. And this. Now any device can be a cloud PC with Windows 365. Hybrid work is here. With Windows in the cloud, embrace flexibility in how, when, and where you work. Streaming your personalized Windows experience from the Microsoft Cloud. Your cloud PC is always current, so pick up where you left off. All your apps, content, and settings, ready wherever your work takes you. Integrated management and security, with everything in the cloud. Scale on demand to meet your needs. With company-owned or first-mobile devices, all one seamless experience that's just a few clicks to deploy. The world of work has changed, so we're changing how you get Windows. Streamed from the cloud to any device to unlock your business's full potential. Hybrid Windows for a hybrid world. Welcome to Windows 365.
So you guys have probably heard some terms like modern work and hybrid work, and that's been pretty hot topics in the last couple of years. So we got users that are working from home. Some of them are working under short contracts, and it's really just increasing some of the strain for organizations, both in the IT department and the HR department, and many departments really. So Entra IDs kind of gives us the tools so we can enable zero trust principles, making sure that those users are verified when they access and that they have the least amount of access necessary. And it doesn't matter where they are or what device they're coming from. So tools like Intune and Autopilot and Windows 365 work with this zero trust model and all kind of contribute to providing an easier management source for IT. Automatic provisioning of those Windows 365 cloud PCs can help save IT precious time. Once they're configured, it really can be as simple as just assigning a license. So our Windows 365 tool is provisioned out of that license. When it gets assigned, those policies can take over and see that. So if users can get to work faster, and if they can do it from anywhere, then I would think that the experience is going to be better for just about everybody. And our frontline worker scenarios aren't to be forgotten. Our Windows 365 tool can help provide a consistent experience for those folks and save the organization time and money. So Windows 365 cloud PCs don't require any complex infrastructure on the back end to maintain or configure. A lot of our traditional VDI solutions, work under those premises. So Windows 365 is configured from Intune. All of our apps and policies and settings can be applied automatically, and it's really not so different from Autopilot in that way. When Windows 365 PCs are configured, provisioning a new cloud PC, again, can be just about as simple as assigning that license, and allows users to get started in a couple of hours. So not days, not weeks, but hours. And when a user leaves the organization, their license can be assigned to another user, and that allows for faster, flexible onboarding. Windows 365 uses the power of the cloud and takes the capabilities of any device that the user has to provide a full personalized Windows experience. The Windows experience comes as organizations around the world grapple with ways to facilitate our hybrid work models, and employees are both on site and around the globe nowadays. So our Windows 365 experience is versatile, it's familiar and productive because these users are going to have their same personal content and settings and apps from any device, from any place. It's simple for deployment and it's easy to manage. We've got one single console, one single pane of glass to do that. And it's secure by design, in part because it leaves no data on the device where the user is using it. Cloud PCs are available on just about any device. They're optimized for the best experience on a Windows PC, and it's at a predictable price. Lastly, it's scalable and it's resilient, and it supports, our rapidly changing workforce needs. With all this, we hope to make Windows 365 loved by both users and trusted by IT. So hoping to, provide some simplicity and also provide versatility for those folks who are in a hybrid work state. So for your employees, they'll be able to boot instantly into their cloud PC. This streamlines that whole experience. Again, their apps and content and settings are all right there in the cloud at any time. And that Windows 365 PC is going to travel with the users, and it's always ready to go. It's always updated. It's always managed right there in the cloud. So users can just pick up where they've left off. The state of the cloud PC is going to stay the same. It's persistent. And for the IT department, Windows 365 offers many configurations to let them scale to meet employees' needs. So we're going to give them the right processing power and the right storage when they need it. If they need more, then the PC can be upgraded to accommodate. Windows 365 purchasing is pretty easy. You don't need an IT department and a whole infrastructure on the back end. We can just go and grab a license from a portal and go to windows365.com, be able to manage that and provide it to the users pretty quickly. So Windows 365 overall is going to be simplifying that procurement, deployment, overall management and updating. It's all virtualization on the back end, but it's presented as a simple, easy-to-use tool for the end users. And finally, again, it's secure by design. So Windows 365 stays in the cloud, and the information stays in the cloud on that device and not on the local device that the user's accessing from. So that gives us a secure and productive experience for those users, and it's always up to date. It's always patched on the back end from Microsoft, and we've got the backing of all those Microsoft security capabilities and baselines. So Windows 365 provides security while taking away layers of security complexity. And again, Microsoft offers options for cloud PC licensing, ensuring that we have the right tool for the right job. Some of our employees might need one plan to do their best work, and other employees might need a different plan. Microsoft provides those options for greater versatility. Most healthcare organizations will have users that need dedicated access all the time, and they'll have others who do not. With Windows 365 Frontline, everything you know and love about those cloud PCs is available for your employees who only require access for a limited amount of time during each day during their shift. So these cloud PCs are like our dedicated cloud PCs, and that they provide that personalized and persistent desktop experience, but they can only take advantage of that during their shift when they need it. So for those IT folks, we can assign up to 3 licenses or 3 cloud PCs per license, but only one person can be logged in at any given time. So again, they can take over in between shifts, and everybody still has their own personalized cloud PC. Temporary workers on contract might be involved with your organization for a short period of time, but they still need to be onboarded and offboarded the same way that everyone else does. And that can be pretty challenging for multiple departments. So this means provisioning and shipping devices, waiting for those devices because of COVID or other supply chain issues, and ultimately just problems that drag down and add to that onboarding time. So Windows 365 can help streamline that process and get users in and out faster without compromising any experience. An example of this would be Bridget, who's a new remote contractor. She needs to access resources for a time-based project. She gets instructions on how to access her cloud PC for Windows 365. And then on the first day, she's able to get in, get her apps, and get all the content that she needs up in the cloud. And then once that project's over, that PC can be turned off and re-provisioned for the next person that comes in. Frontline workers also present some challenges, and with high turnover, that means that users are going to be onboarded even more often than others. Some of those shared devices can present challenges too, because they can end up providing a degraded experience. I'm thinking about those machines that have a ton of profiles on them. That can definitely impact productivity. And shared devices are also an attack vector. They can be, accessed by many people. They're out in the open a lot of times, and they're used by a lot of folks, and some of those folks might not log off in a timely period. So Windows 365 lets those shift workers access a consistent, persistent cloud PC during their work period. And when their work's done, that device can be configured to automatically log out and then let the next shift get to work without degrading any experience. So those frontline worker licenses allow us to provide our users with secure experiences and save a little bit of money at the same time. Users can access their cloud PCs from the web at windows365.microsoft.com. From here, they can see all of the cloud PCs that are assigned to them. They can log in, reboot, do some troubleshooting if needed, get a pretty good experience straight from the web. If you'd like to provide access from an application, we have the Windows app or the remote desktop client application. And from here, I'm going to hand off to my colleague and solution architect, Tim Humphrey.
All right, thanks, Nate. Appreciate it. All right, so now we want to touch on a couple other aspects to kind of round out the Intune story. So mobile application management with Intune. So one of the reasons that we like to really share this is especially for a lot of the clinical staff and things of that nature who are going to have potentially their own personal device, and they want to access organizational data, using mobile application management is one of the ways that we can facilitate a secure experience without having to manage that user's device. So what is MAM? MAM essentially is a way of containerizing the data around the applications that are being provisioned and provided from the organization. So it allows us to do targeting of policies at the applications rather than at the device layer. And so we use Intune app protection policies in conjunction with Entra conditional access to do enforcement of those. Now, what that's meant to do, it really kind of provides a data leak prevention footprint around these devices, so that as the users want access to this data, whether whether it's checking time or a Teams message or responding to an email or anything like that, that they can do that without having to give IT the control over their device. Now, for corporate-owned devices, we can certainly take MAM and put it in over top of this, provide that containerized experience to bring those data leak prevention controls around not only personally owned devices without enrollment, but corporate-owned devices as well. So we see this as it really in response to a lot of the things that are going on today with privacy and assumption of risk. And so what this allows is that you as an IT organization allows you to assume less risk on managing a device that you don't own or control, but allowing you to provision access to the corporate data in a controlled manner so that you can securely wipe that data without impacting the user's device. So it brings a level of trust and control between your users and the IT organization, and then being able to securely containerize this data. So it's one of the easiest things to get going and to really provide a better user experience for your staff. So just kind of to talk a little bit about this, we can supplement this for the various Android and iOS frontline worker management scenarios. So, the app protection policies are a great way to, like I said, to start ingraining this into your organization. But what we want to get is for these enrolled devices. So as you can see here, this is kind of moving from left to right, legacy through Android Enterprise, through the Android Open Source, with the user affiliated or shared device scenario. So a lot of times it's these two at the end that we're really wanting to focus on a lot of times for that. We want to provide, that rich experience that lets the user sign in easily, as Nate talked about earlier, to be able to get in and out of devices quickly, due to shift changes or things of that nature. But then making sure that we provide, that consistent experience, and one that we're, providing those controls around, as these are typically more around those corporate-owned device scenarios. And the same thing, again, with Apple around their frontline management scenario. However, theirs is a little bit different. We do have, as you see, the corporate-owned scenario here, but we also have that management technology plane. So the Apple frontline worker device management plane that kind of sits in the middle there. And we can handle these two scenarios, the Apple shared iPads scenario, as well as the Microsoft Entra ID shared device mode for iOS and iPad. So we can handle both of those scenarios that allow you to build applications, that you're wanting to present to these frontline workers, in the either one of those scenarios, those shared iPads or shared device mode scenarios, so that we can present them with an experience that is, again, fully, device automated enrollment and, fully provisioned applications, and they're in a managed and controlled scenario there, but are specifically set up for those frontline worker scenarios. So another piece of the puzzle is user personas. All right, so a lot of you're thinking, what in the world does user personas have to do with device management? Well, it has a lot. So what we find when we work with a lot of organizations, especially even in healthcare, is trying to understand what does a day in the life look like for a particular segment of the population that I am providing IT assets to. And so, user personas, it's not an exact science. I mean, and sometimes it's literally just about talking to people. A lot of times within either HR or hiring managers or certain department leads or heads, to try to find out and understand what are those users need in order to be able to facilitate and participate within the organization from things that are internally focused and focused, as well as externally focused in interacting with their customers. So it really serves as a way of putting a face to someone in the organization so that you can understand how they work and what they need, from a device standpoint to an application standpoint to what are they a shift worker, all of those types of things. So really what it's meant to do is it's really meant to help IT group resources together so that you have a commonality that can be provisioned to segments of the user population within your environment. So whether this is an emergency room or whether this is a doctor's office or whether this is, the administrative back end or the financial department or something like that, this just allows you to kind of begin to streamline those joined moves and leaves that occur within the organization. So we can leverage things like autopilot, like Nate talked about, and Windows 365 PCs to be able to put some automation behind these processes when we understand how users participate within the organization. So Entra ID is a great tool and Intune for helping us to turn those user personas into deployment logic, essentially, that we use. And so let me show you kind of an example of what a persona looks like. So this is just an example of things that we collect typically when we do a user persona. So it's really things that make up that user. So things like a description of what is their role within the organization? What are their responsibilities? What kind of capabilities do they need? What does the day in the life look like for this person from when they start at the beginning of their shift till the end of their shift? Is there things that occur that I need to make sure that I need to, provision certain applications to them that need certain permissions? Are they going to be using a dedicated device at some point in their shift? Are they going to be using a roaming device at some point? So things like that are what we're wanting to understand. So building those use cases, understanding that work styles really helps you to understand, what type of technical solutions you can provide to everyone for this. All right. So Frontline worker enablement, really, as we built all of these pieces, from Intune to autopilot to Windows 365 to mobile application management, all this is really meant to build on and give you a platform to enable frontline workers to have a great experience within your environment. So a couple of things that you may not be aware of that I think are really neat tools that Microsoft has made available is here's one that's called My Staff. And this gives the frontline workers, especially the frontline worker managers, the ability to perform certain administrative functions that IT may normally handle, and allows it to be delegated down so that from this mobile application, they can facilitate a password reset or updating, some things like multi-factor authentication information. So it allows that, instead of having to go back up to a help desk, it allows that frontline manager who maybe supervises, a certain section or department or floor or whatever, to be able to handle some of these previously IT functions can be delegated down. So that's just one thing I wanted to call out there. Another one is quiet time. So this is really, we get asked about this a lot with shift workers especially, and we know that certain states have certain laws and regulations and things of that nature. So what Microsoft has here is the ability to implement a new feature called quiet time. This also works within Intune, and what it's meant to do is to cater to allow you to set, for right now, for email, Outlook, and Teams to be able to suppress message notifications during non-working hours. So essentially what it will do is it will put up a message when you go to open the application and says, you have, these are quiet hours, and you can set it to override, but when you deploy the policy, you can set so that it can't be overridden. If you're needing to have, stricter enforcement of that, they can't access those things due to, certain work requirements. So I wanted to call that out as a really neat feature that I think, again, shows Microsoft's investment in the frontline story here and some things that you may not have been aware of. Now, again, what all of what we've shown today is really to build upon this final piece here is, within the M365 stack, there's a lot of things that we can do, from virtual appointments to virtual nursing to, care coordination, collaboration, scheduling, and, user training, corporate communications, all sorts of things that get lit up when we have a good platform underneath that we can provide these services to. So today, we talked about the shared PC, the kiosk mode. So all of these types of things can participate within that Intune experience on the devices, so that we can set them up, but to do any of these types of use cases based off the user personas that we map to their job function. So again, this is really trying to build a story here to showcase all of this abilities, that it starts with the device, understanding the user experience, mapping that to the right, solution area, and then, developing out these frontline, scenarios for healthcare, as shown here. All right. So in summary, we talked about Autopilot and all the great use cases that it has for, device lifecycle management challenges, not only in healthcare, but in any organization. User personas, again, are there to help simplify building that device, an application profile, so we can do accurate targeting. Because again, if we don't have accurate targeting, Autopilot in Windows 365, it's just another process. We still aren't getting them what they need. So that's where the user persona, making the investment in really understanding what the users need in order to get ready day one, is an exercise that will help you have a better device management and modern management experience. Again, ma'am, I can't stress this enough. It's a great, easy solution to address the BYOD scenarios that you may have without having to enroll those devices. And again, Intune also has an additional Intune Suite add-on SKU that you can use to extend Intune even further for opportunities that we didn't even talk about today, like remote control, advanced analytics, doing update to firmware for specialized devices, and things of that nature. So definitely a lot of opportunities there to do even more with that. And like I said, we've done a lot of Intune Autopilot deployments, Windows 365 deployments to our customers. So definitely look forward to talking to you further about those if you have opportunities you need assistance with. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mark and let him curate if we have any questions or talk about these questions that we have here.
Great. Thanks, Tim. Yeah, I mean, we did have a few questions to hopefully kick off a little bit of discussion here as we would kind of look at wrapping this up. So starting at the beginning, what challenges does your organization face with onboarding and offboarding users? So overall, when we talk to customers, we found that, unfortunately, this can be sometimes a very manual process. And it's not that it's necessarily hard, but there's a lot of cycles that are spent. So I'm not sure if Tim or Nate or anybody would have any other comments as to what they've seen, but we've just found that there are efficiencies, kind of like the provisioning with Autopilot, that there can be the synergies that are gained there.
Yeah, I can certainly speak to that just a little bit, Mark. And that's why we really wanted to point out the user persona piece, because that's where one of the things that we have so much manual go back and touch. It's because the IT organization a lot of times doesn't fully understand what the users are requiring to get in a business ready state. And so that's why we wanted to, kind of bring that forward and call that out as one of the challenges that we see that prohibits folks from having a better onboarding and offboarding experience, no matter what, of the technology solutions you do.
Yeah, I think it's rare too. I see a lot of folks really focused in on technology and security specifically, but I'd say it's less common for organizations to spend the time to stop and ask and say, hey, are there inefficiencies with how we get folks ready to go and how we offboard those folks when they're ready to leave? And most of the time the answer is yes, and some of those wins are pretty simple, pretty easy, but if nobody asks the question, then nobody's going to provide those answers a lot of times. And just to touch there briefly, Tim, I know you and I talk about it all the time, but even if I'm not working with mobile devices or MAM policies and I'm working with an Intune engagement, I still love to touch on that because I think those app protection policies are one of the biggest wins that most organizations can have in terms of being able to protect your devices, and you don't have to have them enrolled. So people don't, you say, well, we're not going to be looking at your device. We just want to protect our data on your device. So you don't have to chase down company devices and wipe them and reload them. Just can be rapidly implemented. The experience is good, and everybody wins.
Certainly, great points there with the man without enrollment. I think very easy thing, low hanging fruit there, right, guys? So looking at the next question is, how can your organization simplify frontline worker device management? Nate and Tim, whoever wants to kind of tackle that.
Yeah, so this has been a challenge for a lot of my customers. The frontline worker atmosphere is kind of changing, and it really has in the last few years. And it seems like, especially in the healthcare situation, we've got a lot of folks who are temporary or traveling workers, so that's got an additional strain on that work process, and we see folks looking to reevaluate how they're enabling these folks to get work done. And the Windows 365 story is one of those things that I really, really enjoy. Someone who's spent a lot of time working with those technologies, and even working, again, with traditional PCs, the ability to just get somebody spun up on a device. You don't even have to give them a PC. You can just send them a link and they can get to work. Or, if they are in the office and they are more of that frontline scenario, then, you can, again, provide them, a generic kind of kiosk and let them get to work from their cloud PC is kind of a window into that. And then because they're not going to be around very long, or for a temporary case, and some there's high turnover in that segment, we can just take that subscription license and re-provision a new PC for the next person that comes in. So it's all right there. We don't have to worry about somebody sending in a device or somebody taking advantage of a device that's on the floor, or just makes it a lot easier, in my opinion. And then with the mobile devices as well, being able to provision those from Intune and have those shared experiences on those devices supported right out of the box instead of having to develop something in a custom fashion is also very nice. And a lot of our customers, they, sometimes we'll go through the MDM exercise and they're like, we didn't even know this was possible. So those are my favorite stories when I'm like, hey, just really, you can tell that we've made everybody's life a little bit easier.
Yeah, great insights. And then finally, the last question here, and it's really looking at gaps. I think this will kind of play back to some of the user persona stuff of looking at, hey, is there something you're using now that's just not meeting your needs? And really, where could the Intune come into play as you look at all of those scenarios, whether they are user-driven or frontline scenarios. So I will kind of throw that to the audience. And we will wrap at the end of that. So I just did want to give thank you, everybody, for joining. We appreciate the time. We will still be watching chat if there are any additional questions. And then I will throw it to Nate and Tim to go ahead and wrap.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. We appreciate it. So we want to just thank everyone for your attendance today, and we hope you enjoy the content that we presented today. And if you are facing any of these challenges that we talked about earlier today, we certainly can come alongside and help you with that. And that's where, from the deck here, you'll be able to schedule an intro call with us. Again, we have a practice here that covers not only device management, but all of these core areas that align to what we presented today. So we'll be more than happy to have a discussion with you on how we can help with that. I know we talked to a lot of customers that have multiple MDM solutions. It's not uncommon. I had one just the other day that had 4 different solutions in managing 4 different aspects, and we were able to do some consolidation and simplification of that. So if that's your story, reach out to us and let us know. We'd love to have further conversations with you. And with that, we thank you for your time and attendance today, and we hope you have a great rest of your day.